Last year was easy. The S24 Ultra was my favorite phone, and I used it every day. But the S25 Ultra has very few hardware upgrades, and in fact even has a downgraded S Pen. And at the same time, the OnePlus 13 made enormous improvements, the Pixel 9 Pro had massive leaps as well, and that got me wondering which is actually the best phone to use. Like, I had some preconceived notions of maybe Google Pixels had better photos or Samsung had better hardware, but that's kind of all out the window now. Like, for example, look at these three photos. Can you tell which one was the Pixel, which one was the OnePlus, and which one was the S25 Ultra? We'll dig into that more later in the video, but the Galaxy S25 Ultra, the Pixel 9 Pro, I'll be using the XL in this video, and the OnePlus 13 are all really impressive phones, and I've used each of them as my personal phone for some time now, but I really wanted to test them head-to-head to see which one takes better photos, which one's faster, which one has better hardware, and ultimately, which deserves a spot in my pocket as my everyday phone. Now, to make sure this is fair, I have 12 different categories in which I'll test and compare these three flagship phones. We'll score them in each category, and in the end, we'll have a definitive answer on which is actually the best phone. And I will put my SIM in that phone, and that will be my new phone for the coming months. Category number one is the physical design, and there are some pretty drastic differences between them. For one, the material on the back of the OnePlus is actually selectable. There's three different models of the OnePlus 13. There's a plastic back, which is like vegan leather, which is the blue one here. There's a textured glass that kind of looks like wood grain and feels like wood grain as well. And then there's a smooth glass version as well, which is cool. You can choose what kind you want. If you want it to be scratch resistant or shatter resistant, you have that option. The Pixel and the Samsung are both just glass on the back, but you do have some pretty drastic differences in the hand. So the OnePlus kind of has these chamfered edges that makes it feel slimmer and a little bit more round in your hand, while still being boxy all the way on the edges, as you can see around there. The Samsung is just boxy everywhere, and you can really feel it when you hold it in your hand. It can dig into your palm a little bit, but at the same time, it gives you a nice flat grip to hold onto if you're taking photos or if you're just kind of grabbing it from the side like that. And the Pixel's somewhere in between. It's not quite as round as the OnePlus, but it's not quite as boxy as the S25 Ultra. But we do have some differences in the materials with these. The titanium frame on the S25 Ultra should be more durable than the aluminum on the OnePlus and on the Pixel. But the OnePlus is more durable when it comes to water. It's IP68 and IP69 water resistant, which basically means you can have jets of hot water shooting at it, which you can't have on the just IP68 Samsung and Pixel. A benefit of the Pixel though with design is that it actually comes in two different sizes, something that we don't see with the other ones. And I think that is an absolutely enormous win. I love having smaller phones without compromising on the specs. If you get the Pixel 9 Pro non-XL, same cameras, same specs, same basically everything, just a smaller, more pocketable phone. As far as aesthetics go, this is very subjective. I think I really like the OnePlus design. I think it looks a little bit unique, very different, and with three different styles, it's also very personalizable as well. I think the Pixel has become more like classic and iconic, like you can really recognize the bar anywhere. I think functionally, I love that there's no camera wobble with this. If you set it on a table, it doesn't wobble back and forth if you're using your phone. The other two phones definitely have plenty of wobble, and the Samsung looks very nice. It's a very clean looking phone, although that can be maybe a little bit boring. It's very minimal, very clean, but very minimal. Functionally, Samsung does have an S Pen, a downgraded S Pen, but an S Pen nonetheless, which is great for, I don't know, taking handwritten notes, signing documents, controlling your phone with the pen, but you can't use it as a remote shutter anymore and use the air gestures, which you could in the 24. So all three of these, as far as design goes, are great, but I did promise to rate them, so here it goes. I would say the OnePlus 13 for improved ergonomics, aesthetic options, and durability comes in first place for the first category. Then the S25 Ultra, mostly because I really like the S Pen, and the titanium should make it more durable. Then the Pixel, I really love it because it doesn't wobble, I love the design, and I love that it has two sizes, but I have to put that in third place here. But before we get into the camera test, which is category number 3, I want to wrap up the design with an analysis of category 2, which is of course the displays. These all have, on paper, pretty similar displays, similar resolution, 120 Hz, all the normal fantastic quality stuff, but there is at least one significant difference here. It's not the size, they're all 6.8 or 6.9 inches. OnePlus claims to have a better display rating this year, but honestly, even though it's a slightly higher peak brightness, I find that the displays all look fairly similar to me with one exception, and that is the anti-glare display on the S25 Ultra. This was also on the 24 Ultra, but now with Gorilla Armor 2, should be a little bit more durable. I also think that having the boxier corners makes it better for viewing media on here. It doesn't cut off your media in the corners, so viewing media is definitely better on the 25 Ultra. Like I said before, I like that there is an option to have two different display sizes for the Pixel, the 9 Pro XL or the 9 Pro. So ranking them in category number 2, the S25 Ultra definitely wins. Keep in mind though, if you put a screen protector on this, which you may want to do so you don't shatter it like my 24 Ultra, it kind of loses that anti-glare. It's going to be as reflective as a screen protector, so without a screen protector, that's a huge win. But the other two I have to say are tied. I think they're both, I'm gonna give them both second place on this one. Category number 3, finally getting into this camera test. So let's start off with this camera test with this tower right here, and this is gonna be a general trend you can see on all of the photos that I show you after this. The OnePlus 13 is going to be brighter, it's going to be sharper, it's going to have a much higher saturation, and on some photos like landscapes, that can look really good, but generally you're gonna have a flatter image on the Pixel 9 Pro, and the Galaxy, it's kind of in between the two, but sometimes it is a little bit inconsistent with the color. Like, for me, at least this tower does look a little bit too greenish in the Samsung photo. Looking at a street photo out here, if you look at the sky, again, kind of blown out a little bit on the OnePlus, whereas all of them, it's kind of hard to tell the difference in this one. I think the Pixel 9 Pro, again, being a little flatter, is a little bit more true to life here. Going to this statue photo outside, Samsung does have a tendency, you'll notice throughout this camera test, to really make the sky extremely saturated and very light blue, and also it makes foliage like a light green as well. So I'm not sure why it does that. It really oversaturates those two things, but otherwise it doesn't tend to be radically oversaturated. Now, out of these three photos, I think you'll notice that the statue is a little bit more well exposed on the OnePlus and on the Pixel, but the cloud is a little bit more overexposed on the OnePlus, whereas it's pretty accurately exposed, I would say, on the Pixel and on the Samsung. This balcony image kind of illustrates the white balance in all of them, which they all do a pretty decent job. Again, the OnePlus really having a ton of contrast, very, very sharp. Like look at the leaves, for example, how contrasty they are with the background. And this kind of cool abandoned building is just another demonstration of that. Although this one has some kind of weird yellow going on the vines with the OnePlus 13. So now going indoors, this little vase with some dried flowers in it, this is a better illustration of the oversaturated image from the OnePlus 13, which again, some people are going to like that if it's more of a, you know, if you're taking a picture of the ocean or some trees or something, but sometimes it can be a little bit too much. It looks like there's almost a filter applied. They all do have a nice bokeh, a nice natural blur in the background, thanks to a fairly large sensor on all of them. But if we then use the telephoto lens on all three of these and zoom into 5x, again, nice natural blur in the background of all of them, just a good portrait looking photo. And this is where that green in the background, like I said, being oversaturated, actually kind of looks pretty good here. Moving to the ultra-wide lens, we're gonna kind of zoom in on a bunch of things. The OnePlus 13 doesn't go as ultra-wide as the other two. The Samsung, again, did the same thing it always does with the mega saturated sky, and the Pixel is very, very flat and almost kind of like a boring photo. The water looks very desaturated on the Pixel there. Not to complain, they're all great photos, but if we zoom in now, again, the primary lens now, you can see all three of them very, very contrasty on the OnePlus, as we're gonna see again and again. And as we zoom in, obviously it's kind of humid out there, so you are going to be getting more of a hazy photo on the Samsung and on the Pixel, whereas the OnePlus kind of cuts through that just by sharpening the image a lot, adding that contrast, and so it doesn't look nearly as hazy as you can see right here. Zooming into the max zoom on all three of these, you're maxing out at 30x on the Pixel, 100x on the Samsung, and 120x on the OnePlus 13, but a higher number doesn't necessarily mean it is going to be better at zooming in. There is a cool feature I'll mention in a second, but if I just crop them all to the same size, you can see that the Pixel actually does a better job than the OnePlus despite only zooming in 30x instead of 120x. If you manually crop in, you just get a much better photo. I noticed with the OnePlus 13, whenever I zoom in really far, it tends to just kind of make things like almost a silhouette actually. And of course, Samsung does a pretty reliable job on the left side. You can see really sharpening everything, but this really surprised me when I was cropping in just how much better the Pixel was at zooming than I expected. Like you would expect it to be able to zoom in at least 50x with that kind of quality. But the OnePlus 13 has a trick up its sleeve. As you can see right here, they have an AI feature which actually enhances the image once you zoom in all the way. It'll guess what you're looking at, and sometimes it's quite accurate. Zooming in on a beach with some dunes behind it, some rocks there, and a condo in the background, it actually made this photo surprisingly usable using some generative AI there. And of course, going to some more zoom tests right here in a very well-lit environment, starting at the wide angle, we're gonna zoom all the way in on that lighthouse in the back. So zooming into 30x, this is very interesting because this one actually, the OnePlus did quite a good job here, even though it looks a little bit AI enhanced, but there's no actual AI feature that you can toggle on or off until you get to about 60x zoom. But I think, out of all of these, if I had to, at a glance, choose one photo, the middle one stands out as being quite a good photo here. But, here you can see what I was talking about, over contrasting when you zoom in. So on the lighthouse, it worked out fine, but when you're zooming in on something like people, this is 30x on this surfer right here, and I have a couple photos to demonstrate this was not a fluke. This happens all the time. The middle, the OnePlus, I just don't know what was happening here. This is not AI, it's just somehow messing up what the guy looks like. It doesn't really, it makes him look like a silhouette or something. Whereas the Galaxy and the Pixel, you can actually really say they almost look identical. They did a really good job. Although the Pixel does kind of smear the guy's face. I'm not sure what's going on right there. Looking at some more fast action shots, we have really similar performance on all of them. I think the OnePlus does a slightly better job of capturing an exact moment, where it's a little more blurry with the Samsung, and it's kind of in the middle with the Pixel here as well. If you have a subject fairly close to you, they all do have to lift the shadows quite a bit to make it look visible, but you have a nice blur in the background with them. But you can actually go even further, and you can get quite close to a lot of objects and get almost a macro type experience with the primary lens. But going to the ultra-wide lens, all three of these do have a macro mode. It's hard to say what's the best here. I think you see the most details on those little tiny spikes or leaves using the S25 Ultra. And then here is another backlit shot of just the sun shining at these chess pieces from behind, and it's a very, very difficult shot, but the Pixel did lift up the shadows the most, making it, I would say, the most usable, whereas the OnePlus is just too dark. Looking at a selfie, the front-facing camera, I think this is kind of a little bit subjective here. The OnePlus makes my face look very, very soft, whereas the Pixel, I think, sharpens it quite a bit and almost makes me look even older. The Samsung photo didn't get the skin tone quite right. It looks a little too red. I'd say OnePlus makes my skin look a little too yellow, whereas Pixel, they've kind of been for quite a few years now, I would say an industry leader in getting skin tones correct. So in my opinion, the selfie looks the best from the Pixel. So for general photos, my ranking is Pixel in first place, Samsung in second place, OnePlus in third place. Category number 4 then is low light photos. And this is a really interesting situation where the Samsung really saturated the sky, made it very, very blue. I think I actually really like the OnePlus photo here. I think the color accuracy of the railing, the white balance down there, is probably even better than the Pixel, I would say. But the Pixel and the OnePlus are both fairly similar. I like how the OnePlus is a little darker, so you can tell it's actually a photo at night. It doesn't really try to turn it into a daylight photo. In a very, very dark room, again, OnePlus actually kind of nailed it here. The skin tone looks pretty decent. Not a whole lot that looks wrong with any of these photos, except the Samsung photo kind of gave me like a weird black eye. Like, my face looks very off in that one. And the Pixel, it did soften my face quite a bit here. It wasn't picking up the details that I think it wanted to. The ultra-wide lens is where Samsung does kind of pull ahead then. They do have their new 50 megapixel ultra-wide lens compared to last year, and I think they nailed it on this one. That photo looks great. The OnePlus photo looks decent, and again, the Pixel just didn't quite hit it on the low light here. So for low light, I kind of have to say all three of these are a tie, but I'm actually gonna choose a winner based on another feature, and that is astrophotography. That's the tiebreaker right here. That definitely puts the Pixel ahead of the others, but if you're looking, like I said, low light portraits, low light shots like that, the OnePlus really does quite a good job, and ultra-wide, the Samsung S25 Ultra does a really good job there. But speaking of portraits, let's get into that as category number 5 in this video, starting off not portrait mode, just zoomed in 5x on an animal to see how this actually looks. OnePlus really messed this one up. I'm not sure what was going on there, but between the Pixel and the Samsung, Samsung has a much clearer image of the dirt and the background. It looks very sharp, very crisp. I like the photo a lot. The Pixel kind of blurred the background, but the eye on the chicken, as you can see, really looks a lot better. I'd say the rooster looks best on the Pixel, but the background looks best on Samsung. And of course, getting into photos of people, this one's very interesting. Again, OnePlus really brightened it a lot, kind of made my face look a little bit yellower, whereas the Pixel, incredibly flat, not really showing any shadows on my face. And a Samsung, I actually really like what Samsung did with this photo right here. But getting into actual portrait mode, there are different portrait modes on these phones. The Samsung phone has a portrait mode for each lens, the primary, the 3x, and the 5x. The OnePlus has 1x, 2x, and 3x, and the Pixel only has 1.5 or 2x for the portrait. But looking at this first one at the base level, the Pixel really didn't do a good job of identifying my hair, and it really over blurred the background in my opinion. I like how the OnePlus had less of a blur in the background. It felt more like a natural photo, and the sidewalk was slightly less blurred when it was closer to me. So I would say that was actually my favorite out of these three right here. But if we zoom in a little bit more on Samsung to their 3x lens, I think you kind of get that blur in the background looks a little bit more natural here. I still like the color on the Pixel phone, but when we go into the maximum zoom here, this is where OnePlus falls apart for some reason. I'm not sure what they were doing. The skin tones here, they made it overexposed and also very like yellow looking, way too warm. The Pixel looks very consistent with what we saw before. Not my favorite on this one, but Samsung, I think, absolutely nailed it with this portrait shot. I think the background looks great. It did a perfect job of detecting my hair. The skin tone looks good. Samsung absolutely nailed it here. So for portrait shots, I'm going to say Samsung comes in first place here, then the Pixel, then the OnePlus, mainly because I don't know what OnePlus was doing on that last portrait shot. And now, of course, a video test. All right, so just a quick video test. All three of these phones are filming in 4K right now. We'll start off with the OnePlus 13. Let me know how the microphone sounds on this. We can compare that to the Pixel 9 Pro. And of course, the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. I'm actually going to move over here. This is a very difficult environment for most phones where you have a dark blue background and my skin's fairly well exposed on one side, very dark on the other. So let me know how these perform, which one does the best job here, and of course if I turn around in a much easier environment, how they perform over here. One thing to note is that the Pixel and the S25 Ultra both have audio eraser, so that's kind of a nice feature if you want to remove some background sounds. The S25 Ultra, though, really pulls ahead by having log video, so the power users are going to really appreciate that, and it also has smooth camera zoom, so you can smoothly, rather than kind of like swiping up and down, you just hold up and it'll have the consistent pace as you zoom in between all of the different lenses. All right, moving along to category number 7 now, we have the social media test. This is the last of the camera tests, but still a really important one for anybody who's not just recording content on their camera. Maybe instead you're using the Instagram app or TikTok or something else. And so looking at these examples here, I think that while the Pixel did a pretty decent job with the chest pieces, I think maybe the best one out of that set of photos, Samsung generally was outperforming the other two cameras. Better selfie, better plants on the wall. The video, I think, was a little bit better. So in this category, I think Samsung actually wins, and then I'd say Pixel and then OnePlus for social media. Of course, it may be a little bit dependent on updates in the future and which apps you're actually using, but for my testing, that's the ranking I would give them. Now, the speakers, category number 8 here. If you are listening to music or playing games or whatever on your phone, this is kind of a tricky one because it really does depend on what volume you're listening to for second and third place. But for first place, no doubt, the S25 Ultra is clearer, more bass, it's louder, overall just a better set of speakers, and it's very noticeable. I think even the untrained ear could listen and say, yeah, that one's definitely better. The Pixel and the OnePlus, it is a little bit trickier for anyone who doesn't know what they're looking for to find the difference, but I noticed a lot more distortion on the Pixel speakers, so I have to say the OnePlus speakers, at least anywhere near full volume, will be performing a little bit better. They're not perfect, but I still think they are better than the Pixel speakers. Category number 9 then is the battery life, and this is where specs can be a little bit confusing. It's tempting to just look at the total battery capacity in milliamp hours and say the longest is going to be the best considering they have similar processors, but that's not always true. Although the OnePlus does have new battery technology in here, which gives it a 6,000 milliamp hour versus 5,000 on the other two phones essentially. Much larger battery, also much more energy dense while being lighter essentially. So the larger battery made a difference, but not as much of a difference as I thought it might have. So all three of them have similar-ish battery life. So I've done a lot of my own anecdotal testing, I've done some video tests, and I've seen a lot of other tests out there. I think the best one is probably Tom from TechChap. He did a test and he was getting about 8.5 hours with the Pixel 9 Pro, so definitely the shortest battery life here, then 10 hours and 3 minutes on the S25 Ultra, and 10 hours and 45 minutes on the OnePlus 13. So like I said, even though it has a 20% larger battery, it's only getting about another 42 minutes of battery life, at least in that test. But something to note though, something that nobody else talks about that I've noticed every time I use a Pixel for the past couple generations, and 100% with this one as well, and that is the standby battery on Pixels is just uncontested, is absolutely the best out there. Like, I could leave this phone on my desk for a week and then come back and I can turn it on and it will still be on. Like, I'm not saying shut your phone down. I mean, just turn the screen off and it just doesn't die. So that's very impressive if you don't charge your phone overnight, for example, or any situations where you might not always have access to that. But the OnePlus does have better charging than the other two. It has significantly faster wireless charging and very fast wired charging as well. So for batteries, OnePlus is in first place. I have to say Samsung's in second place just because of the battery testing that I've seen and done. And of course, Pixel is in third place, even though it does a really good job of the standby battery. Category number 10. I'm kind of bundling price and storage here because they really go hand in hand. If you upgrade the storage, the price changes. So the S25 Ultra is $1299, but there are always trade-in credits and discounts and bonuses. So I'll have links to all three of these down below. You can check out the latest price, and if you want to support the channel, those are affiliate links, so at no cost to you, you can get the best prices down there. The OnePlus 13 is at least $400 cheaper, but they always have, again, trade-in credits and bonuses, so a lot of times it's even $500 cheaper, so that is a massive difference considering these perform pretty similarly in a lot of these tests. The Pixel 9 Pro XL is $1,100, and the Pixel 9 Pro is a very cool just $999. I mean, looking at those, that's not the full story though, because the storage you get with them really varies a lot. For example, the Pixel 9 Pro and the Pro XL start at 128 gigabytes. They go up to a terabyte for sure, but that's an extra $450. The OnePlus 13 starts at 256 gigs, goes up to 512, and sure, you can get some free promos and stuff like that to boost that storage for free, but again, you're starting higher than 128, which you saw on the Pixel. So that alone is already worth some money right there. And the S25 Ultra starts again at 256 gigs and goes up to 1 terabyte, but at a cheaper rate than the Pixel, only an extra $360 compared to that $450 that we saw on the Pixel. As far as the RAM goes, 12 gigs on the S25 Ultra, 16 gigs on the Pixel, but they use it a little bit differently, some AI stuff, and the OnePlus is either 12 or 16 gigs of RAM. So kind of looking at this right here, the winner is the OnePlus 13. You're definitely getting the best value, the most storage, at the lowest price with the OnePlus 13. The Pixel 9 Pro, not the XL, like I said, starts at 128, but if you want to match the base storage, you have to go to 256, like I said, which is going to be an extra $100. So $1,200 versus $1,300 for the Ultra, meaning the Pixel is still a slightly better deal, dollar for dollar, than the S25 Ultra when we're just looking at storage and cost. So that puts the S25 Ultra in third place here. Category number 11 then, this is personally my favorite category, but also the most difficult. I'm gonna mention a ton of features here. There are, of course, way too many features to mention, so there are going to be some that I didn't mention, and be sure to leave a comment and let me know what your favorite features are on any of these three phones. But the ones that I really consider highlights that are generally unique to one or the other, well, starting off with the Pixel, Google call screening, hold for me, call notes, and all of the call assistance features on Google really are just a big game changer for me. If you have to call the IRS, for example, or somebody that you're gonna be on hold for a long time, it will hold for you. That's a big benefit. If you are on a call and there's a lot of options, rather than waiting to read through all the options, if anybody has used a Pixel phone to call that in the past, it'll have the options there and you can just select it. It'll show up on your screen and again, save you a lot of time. You can also have it do call screening, so any kind of spam calls will be filtered automatically. If you're in a meeting, you can filter calls just by saying screen call, even if you know who it is. So if it's like your wife, they can call you and you're like, I'm in a meeting, I need to know if it's important. Do a little call screening and they'll tell the Google Assistant that it's important and then you can answer the call. There's also Gemini Advanced for free for 1 year. I'm not a huge user of Gemini Advanced, but for AI reasons, it's pretty nice to have it, I guess. AdMe is a huge one that I've already used so many times since launch, and whenever I don't have my Pixel, I wish I had my Pixel because you get that weird situation where there's a group photo and somebody has to take the photo and then maybe somebody else takes another photo and you just have two photos of not everybody there. Well, Google just stitches those together and everybody's in one photo. And really, probably the biggest one here is the satellite SOS. I don't know why others don't have this. The iPhone had this for a couple years now, and this is a huge, huge feature. It could save your life, obviously. If you don't have phone service, you can get satellite SOS and call for help that way. Otherwise, we've got a thermometer on here that I've literally never used, and other things like Now Playing and the googly features that can help you identify songs around you and stuff like that. So that's the Pixel. plenty of features, but generally a pretty light operating system, not very noisy, very user-friendly, and I think anybody, for example, coming from an iPhone would just be really comfortable with the Pixel. It's a very familiar and easy-to-use operating system. Samsung is very feature-rich, but those features can be like really game-changing features for power users. So one is, of course, Samsung DeX, which the S25 Ultra definitely does have. Somebody said in my comments last week that it didn't. I tested it, it absolutely does. So plugging this into any HDMI cable by, of course, adapting to USB Type-C, and this can turn into a full desktop interface. You can connect a mouse and a keyboard to this and use it as if it were like a laptop. You can plug it into a TV, a projector, a monitor, and you just have a totally different interface on that screen. We also have the ability to connect multiple Bluetooth devices, so if you and a friend want to watch a movie on a plane together, you can do that. We have Bixby routines. The Samsung ecosystem, of course, is very expansive with Galaxy tags, watches, Galaxy Ring that can take photos for you and stuff like that. We have stacked widgets on the home screen. We now have the Now bar on the bottom, which you can kind of swipe through. It'll have like timers. It'll have your briefing for the day. It'll have playback controls on music. Or, of course, like I said, the Now brief. So if we tap on that, not super useful. Usually it just tells me like a random news article, my calendar, and the weather. But maybe it'll get better in the future. There's also a lot of other AI features like AI Select to make a GIF or to highlight text and translate it and stuff like that. AI Gallery Search kind of works sometimes. AI Setting Search can be really useful as well. And even though I mentioned call screening on the Pixel, there's something similar on here where Bixby can answer the call for you, and you can just type and you can text to talk. So that could possibly be great for, if you're in a meeting and you want to talk to somebody on the phone real quick, any like maybe deaf individuals, anybody who needs assistance with that could be a really big game changer. And I don't know, perhaps anyone who needs to call and get assistance, but they have to be silent. So I don't know, maybe calling emergency services or something like that. So that's just some of the Samsung features. There's plenty more. But the OnePlus 13, well, as I mentioned, faster wireless charging, if we want to call that a feature here, but Wi-Fi sharing, that's a big one. I'll talk more about that in a second. Beacon Link lets you kind of call by Bluetooth other OnePlus phones. So if you and your friend both have a OnePlus phone and you're both somewhere that you're close to each other, but you don't have service from maybe like on a plane, for example, or a cruise ship, you can call each other like that. There's also Zen mode, which totally locks your phone for like 60 minutes or 30 minutes so you can focus. I personally use that feature a lot and I really like it. The OnePlus shelf on the top has a ton of widgets that are very useful. And of course, there are other features in that, but that's a summary of the ones that I think are highlights. So I kind of like how the OnePlus and Galaxy phones have non-Android app duplicates, like the clock, for example, and the gallery. Like I really hate how the Google Photos app always upsells the backup storage, for example. It feels like it's not really my phone. It's really annoying when they do that, but it really depends for features on what you want as a user. Like if I'm dying on a mountain, satellite SOS is way more important than Samsung DeX. But if I'm on a plane, the Wi-Fi hotspot feature, like I said, is really clutch. So my wife and I can both use multiple devices, like a laptop or a tablet, on one internet plan on the phone. Like kind of a cool feature that you have built into that. But I would say as far as features go, very user dependent, but if I had to rank them, Samsung has the most features, has to be in first place. Then I would say OnePlus, and then I would say Pixel. But if I'm going off grid, I'm definitely bringing the Pixel. Category number 12 then, the speed, and I'll do a little app open test, just kind of demonstrate this for you, but we have the Snapdragon 8 Elite on the OnePlus 13 and on the S25 Ultra. Technically it's Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy, very subtle difference there. And then the Pixel has their Tensor chip, so slightly different, but that is also going to be a little bit slower. So the Pixel is going to be in third place here. Between the OnePlus and the Samsung, it probably depends on what you're doing, but from everything I've done, the Samsung is definitely just a hair faster than the OnePlus as far as like, opening apps, exporting media, doing different stuff like that. So I have to give that the win there. All right, so the conclusion here. I added the scores up. A lower score is going to be better, meaning you came in first place more and third place less. Starting off with third place here is unfortunately the Google Pixel 9 Pro. I really love the cameras on here, and I like that it has two different sizes, but it did fall behind in the speaker test, in the battery life, in the features, the speed, and the design just a little bit there. But I think ultimately, if you care a lot more about having a smaller phone, and if you care a lot more about having better cameras for still photos, the Pixel 9 Pro or Pixel 9 Pro XL could be a great phone for you. Moving up to second place is actually, this was really close between these two, it is the OnePlus 13. You're getting a great value with this phone, so much more affordable, while still getting some maxed out specs with great wireless charging, a really fantastic design with a lot of different options for the material on the back, for example, the texture, the color. It also has an incredible battery life, a lot of storage on here, but it wasn't a top performer in the camera department. And then of course, in first place, I genuinely did not expect this in this video. The S25 Ultra ended up being my top ranked phone. So I guess I will be using this one with my SIM in it from now on. But I think the main reason is because it came in second place for pretty much like most of the categories. It almost never came in third place other than in the price and the storage, but otherwise it was either first or second. It didn't have quite as good of cameras in my opinion as the Pixel, but they were good enough. It wasn't in third place. It really did a pretty solid job, and it was the best for video, it was the best for the speakers, it was the best for the features and the speed and the display like I mentioned before, especially with that anti-reflective display. So there you have it. That is my ranking for the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, the OnePlus 13, and the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL. Leave a comment down below and let me know what your ranking is for these, maybe what categories you care more about or less about. And of course, you could weight this any way you want, but hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, consider liking and subscribing. I'm Mike O'Brien. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.